It's the Craggy Rugby Podcast. It's the midweek edition prior to the Ospreys home match. This week my guests are Danny Deegan. Hiya, Danny.
How's it going?
We've got Linley MacKenzie. Great to have you on the midweek podcast, Linley.
Thank you, Alan. Evening all.
Right, we normally jump straight into the audio from the press conference, but we were slightly neglectful of on our last podcast because Ultan Dillane made his 100th appearance, and we didn't really cover it very well in the last podcast. I suppose maybe because he'd come off the bench and you weren't sure when he was going to make his 100, and then we sort of didn't think about it very well, or didn't cover it very well. So we're going to cover it now. Danny's going to give us a couple of stats, and then Lindy's going to tell us all about him.
Ultan has started 72 games for Connacht, and he's got a 56% winning ratio from those starts. 65 of them have been at 4, and 7 have been at 5. Dillane is our most successful starting number 4 for Connacht, starting more than 20 games with 55%.
Linley, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I suppose I always feel sad for a player who reaches a milestone and he doesn't get the opportunity to play it at the Sportsground in front of a crowd. Mm-hmm. I think what strikes me about him is his always cheerful, pleasant attitude. He's always smiley. He's always happy. And I think his contribution to Connacht you have to look at that type of person who contributes in that sort of way. And I think one of the most important things is Ultan, like a lot of humans, has suffered. And that changes the dynamic and it changes the person. And when you have to overcome trauma or obstacles, then it can go either way. You can become stronger, or you can just, sort of cave in. And I think Ultan went through a difficult time with when the passing of his mum. He was then at that stage, he was on the Irish team, or on the fringes of the Irish team. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately that happened. And I think it took a while for Ultan to basically to grieve and to get over that and to become the Ultan we know. The other thing about Ultan is, and I always look at people sort of maybe more sort of holistically or whatever, their contribution, not necessarily on the pitch, but we know that he's done a huge amount for the Galway Hospice. Yeah. Huge amount. And which I think, and his contribution isn't just on the field. His contribution is as a person and within the wider community. And I think that speaks volume about the person he is.
It most certainly does, and there's not much else we can add to that because that was just so eloquent and so thorough in its evaluation of one of our better players, it has to be said. Thank you, Linley. Okay, now what we'll do is we had Denis, Buckley and Andy Friend at the press conference today, so let's hear what they had to say.
Good win on Sunday, Denis, good performance, bonus point. Was that what was required after the disappointment maybe of the Scarlets?
Yeah, exactly. It was. Like you said, Scarlets is a difficult game for us and one that we didn't really do ourselves justice. We had a poor performance, and especially in some aspects of the game that sort of the fundamentals that our game is built on, we didn't really perform it there. So, look, Zebre was a great chance to go and do that, and we were lucky with the weather. It was blue skies. Okay, it was quite cold still, but it was a really dry pitch, and it's obviously we really enjoyed to play rugby on that type of conditions. So yeah, look, we didn't play great against Scarlets. As a chance to bounce back a little bit, and I think we did that. And all it was really was just sticking really diligently to our game plan and just sort of being a little bit more ruthless when we get chances to score points and tidy up one or two small things indeed, but pretty easy fixes, and made a huge difference.
You must be delighted to see Sean O'Brien back. He's been to hell and back with injuries and waiting. Not alone what he can produce though when he's actually on the field, because he was at it from the first minute. So did that give everybody a sort of a lift as well, that one of your mates was ready to go again?
Yeah, 100%. It was great to see him back out there. He's had a pretty rough road the last 2 years. Really, he got back last year, but played about 10 minutes and then did his shoulder and was out again for a long time. So yeah, look, we were all delighted to see him back there, and you can kind of see why he's so important to us. And straight away, he's he performs like he hasn't missed anything like a year out. That's not easy to do. So it says a lot about how talented he is. And when we have him firing on all cylinders, he just brings something to the team that gives us something unique. He just brings that little bit of brutality to our pack that kind of gives you the edge sometimes over other teams. And you can see why he's so important when he can come back after a year out and perform like he hasn't missed any minutes at all. So fair play to him, and we're all delighted because we get to see how hard he works and how many. It can be pretty tough at times when you're just in the gym rehabbing by yourself, watching lads play. So we're all delighted for him.
And Saturday now, home game, 2 home games in a row to come, 2 6-day turnarounds, because it'll be Friday night when you take on Benetton. The Ospreys, not flying at the moment, managed to sneak past Benetton on Sunday. So what are you expecting there? You've had some good performances against them, particularly in Galway in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, we actually rate Ospreys very highly, and I suppose as a loose head prop, I can appreciate their scrum. They've got a really good scrum. They get dominance in a lot of games. Some really good tight heads there. Like Tom Boat is one of the best tight heads in the competition, so it's exciting to come up against that scrum this weekend. They got a really good maul, good set piece. So yeah, they've had some mixed results this year, but like they're definitely a really, really strong team. With coaches that are trying to make them play maybe a little bit more than they did last year, I think. And we need to be ready to defend. Like, we can expect a good set piece in them, but also the ambition that they're playing with. Our defense needs to be ready for that. So it's going to be a tough game, but one that we're looking forward to.
Denis, one of the things that's endeared you to the Connacht fans has been your ability to break down, to turn over ball. 5 games into the season, do you think both yourself individually and the team is now pretty much on top of how referees are interpreting under the new interpretations? And then I suppose the flip side of that is when Connacht has the ball, do you think you've had to change again individually and collectively your support lines to ensure that the ball carrier doesn't get isolated with the new interpretations?
Yeah, it's obviously a massive part of the game, particularly at the moment or this season, that they've kind of changed their approach around turnovers a little bit. So there definitely is opportunities there to go for them. But saying that, there is always a cost with going for jackals, that you're taking someone out of the line and out of the defense line, I should say. And on top of that, the type of tackle that needs to be done to allow jackals. So I think we've adapted to it, and we're choosing our moments well. And I think it's working really well for us, and we are getting a reward of that because, like you said, it is a massive part of the game. In terms of other teams, like a lot of teams are going after it, and it is something that we do a lot of work on. Like we more or less go live with clean outs on every day 2 training of the week, and it's something that we put a lot of work into with Jimmy. So it's you always have to be wary of it, particularly this year. Some teams are really going after it, and if you're not on the money there, you can really get punished. But I think it's something that, like, we've managed to stop other teams going after our ball pretty well. And then on top of that, I think that we've chosen our moments well when we want to go after opposition ball, or chosen our moments well when we can say, look, let's not contest the rucks, let's keep our numbers in our D line and let's go after them in other parts of defence,
Andy, that was a really decent performance on Sunday. It was good use of your game plan, closed out a very, very, very good win. So what's the feeling when you did the review?
Yeah, it was much better than the previous week, William. Probably exactly that, mate. We thought the game plan was stuck to, adhered to. As you saw, we tripped up over the first 2 minutes, 7-0. Probably the one thing we didn't want was to try and give them a reason to believe and to give them some life, but we gave them that. But what I was impressed with was then the energy we brought for the remaining 78 minutes. And then just the accuracy of the execution, which was certainly lacking the previous week. So an easier review, a good bounce back from the Scarlets game, and important now that we hold on to that and take that into the Ospreys.
Driven, I'm tempted to say, I know he's a young player, and he's very early in his career, but Colm Riley looked really confident out there. His decision making, and what he was trying to do. So that must have been very pleasing, because that was the key to getting the possession from the forwards and getting it used properly.
Yeah, I thought he was brilliant. He's a very quiet young bloke, and he's very, very confident. You know, in fact, you go back to when he was the 20s with the Ireland 20s, and they needed to score to win their Six Nations, and they bring on Colin Riley, take off young Casey, and on comes Riley, and what does he do? He just takes off like we saw on Saturday and scored a brilliant try. And so that turn of speed that he's got, but more so just, you know, he's just an unassuming sort of a bloke, but he gets the job done. His kicking, I thought, was unbelievably accurate on the weekend. His speed of pass, his speed of decision-making, he launches in defensive line, he's brave. All the things you want in a number 9, he gave it to us. So very, very impressed with his performance on Sunday.
The red card didn't dominate the game because Connacht won it, and they refocused when they went down to 14. You probably looked at that quite a lot of times now. What sort of a feeling do you have for it?
It was the same when it happened. Like, I just thought it was a really harsh red card. You know, you go back and you look at, there's a tackle on Tom Farrell at 46 minutes 56 on the match day clock. To me, it's a far worse tackle. It's a player, and how do you not lead with the head? You know, in order to make a tackle, you've got to put your head forward. So I totally get the whole player welfare, and we need to protect players, but in a collision sport, accidents happen. We saw that last year with Paddy McAllister on Marcel Coetzee in the Ulster game, and common sense prevailed in the end on that one. You just had two big men running, and Paddy's not trying to hit him with the head, nor is Marcel trying to get his head knocked off, hitting Paddy with his head. But in a collision sport, these things happen. So we are going to appeal that. Hopefully on Thursday, common sense prevails and it's thrown out.
Ospreys on a Saturday, home game. An opportunity to take the momentum from this game. You didn't maybe get that against the Scarlets because of the huge gap between the Edinburgh win. So what are you looking for on Saturday in terms of that? And what do you have to improve on? Because I tend to say they're a better side than Zebre, although the gap between them, Zebre nearly beat them in Wales the week before you pulverised them in Italy.
Yeah, what's really important to us, William, is the start. You know, if we can start well and build on the confidence that we got out of that Zebre win, that's really important to us. It's also really important that we execute we made 23 errors in the Scarlets game. That got down to 10 errors on the weekend, which is where it needs to be. You're going to get errors in a footy game, but handling errors and unforced errors of 10 is acceptable. What we need to be able to do is to do that, though, if the weather is doing what it's doing, which I don't know what the weather looks like at the moment, but let's just assume, given we're in Galway, there might be a bit of wind and rain. So if it is doing that, righto, we just got to be more clinical with the way we're handling that ball. We've got to make sure we continue to get the line speed in our defensive line with our launch. We've got to make sure we continue to play in the right areas. And I think those three things, we were much, much better on the weekend than we were previously. We just want to make sure we keep that here at the Sportsground. There's an identity which every team has, and as we know, the Connacht identity is probably one to chance your arm a little bit. So it's finding that balance of, you know, when do we chance our arm, and that's a feel. It's a feel out there on the field, and the players will know that more than we'll know it sitting up in the box watching it. And you know, I think back to everyone, Linley, I don't know whether you played footy, but everyone on this call at the moment, I'm assuming you did play rugby, and you knew when you're out there on a footy field, you knew the times when you had the opposition, you knew the times that they had dominance, and it's just that. It's that innate awareness of who's dominating the battle at the moment and when can we chance our arm, or when are we best to say, no, you blokes have the ball, stick to game plan here and work that. So I think as an overlying theme, William, it's, you know, if we can continue to play that smart footy, it's going to help us. But at the same time, we don't want to lose our identity of being the team at the right moment that we back ourselves and we play.
And just looking at who you'd have available for the weekend. Do we have any news yet on Tom Farrell? It was a bit worrying to see him limping off.
Yeah, he had a scan yesterday. It's going to be lengthy, that one. So let's say it'll be 6 weeks plus, but we won't see him for the next 6 weeks at least.
And how's Caelan Blade getting on? Because it's getting interesting now with the scrum halves. Colin Riley, Caelan Blade, Stephen Kerrins, Kieran Marmion. There must be some competition in there.
There is. Listen, Blade, he's been rehabbing really well. Is he right for this weekend? We don't know yet, to be honest. We're probably, the smarter move would be to give him another week, but we'll wait and see how he goes over the next couple of days. He's very, very close to coming back.
And I would say it drives your rehab on when you've got people snapping at your heels.
Yeah, listen, they're good. We've got a great medical staff and a great medical team, and they put together really thorough programs for them. So there's no stone left unturned there, and every player wants to try and beat the. So what tends to happen is you get an injury, and the physios will say that's a 4-weeker, and every player, because they're competitive, say, well, I'll be back in 3. So Bladey's no different. He had a 4-weeker, and if he comes back next week, it'll be 3. So it'll be about spot on.
What's the key for the Ospreys?
I think the start's really important. I think the way we start is super, super important. Now we couldn't have had a worse start against Zebre, so we don't want to have a repeat of that. But the way we worked out of that was very, very good. But for us, I think starting really well on Saturday night's important. I think again continuing to play that smart kicking game is going to be important to us. Playing the right areas. So I'm going to give you 3 with him, and the other one's just we got to get off the line and shut him down, mate. So. But if you give me a gold, silver, bronze, the gold will be the way we start. Really, really important for us.
Andy, I suppose a player who didn't get as much of the column inches, but who's always impressed me, and clearly is impressing you, is Sean Masterson. The likes of himself and Colin, when they're in the academy, at what point do you look at them and go, right, you're ready to do a job for the senior team? And also, the other flanker, of course, on the weekend with Sean O'Brien, how important is he as part to be back in the group?
Yeah, good question, Dave. So with Shawnee Marston, again, great to get him out there for 80 minutes. I think that's his first 80 minutes of pro footy. And I thought he did really well. Like every young player, there's things to work on, but what you'll always get from Sean is energy and just his bounce around the field for us defensively. He continually launches hard and moves well in both attack and defence. So it feels like you've got an extra body out there. So I was really pleased for him with that. When do you see it? It's a good question, and it's a hard one to answer because there's just moments when you're watching a player and you'll either see something that says, I just don't think he's got it, or you'll see something that says, actually, that's what we're looking for. That's something that I think is going to be pretty special. So for anyone that's come through, we've probably seen those moments of, oh, geez, that looks pretty good, looks pretty special. One thing that helps the players is just how coachable they are. And Sean Marston, Colin Riley, any of these young blokes, they're very coachable. They want to know, they want to learn. And if you tell them something, they tend to, you see them process it and fix whatever it is that you've been talking about. So he's got a big future. He's a big-bodied young man. And I think the longer he's in the program, the better he's going to be. Back to Shawnee O'Brien, just great. Great having him back on the park. He's had such a tough 2 years, but he just keeps fronting up. And there's been a lot of patience from a lot of staff, but more so from Sean, just to stay on task. And everyone was just delighted to see him, first of all, get named and then start and then score that try, and then come off the field subbed, not injured. So that was another big thing for him, and hopefully he's ready to go again this week.
Danny, Andy Friend mentioned the fact that he was quite happy with the success rate in the 22, especially compared to last week. What are the figures there?
Yeah, it's much improved this week. Last week we only got into the opposition 22 7 times. This week we got into 11 times, and we scored 9 of those times. Last week it was only 2 of 7.
Linley, your thoughts on the game? We didn't, obviously, with these COVID times, you don't get to talk to you on certainly on away games. So what were your thoughts on the games?
Oh, look, I certainly, what you say about the stats is correct, but I think you also have to balance it with the difference in opposition between the Scarlets and Zebre. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is Connacht have gone to Zebre in the past and struggled. Mm-hmm. And certainly I think last time with the 6-5 match, if I remember rightly, was, on a knife edge for a lot of the time. And we escaped, luckily, with that win. So I suppose Connacht had been primed. And I think it's always easier, not much easier, but you always expect a response after you've had such a poor match like they did against the Scarlets. So you were expecting something a little bit better. It was good to see some of the players like scrum half Colin Riley in action, who definitely contributed a huge amount to that game. I think there were several other aspects to the game in terms of just the set piece, little bit wobbly at times, particularly in the lineouts. But look, all in all, it was a hard-working performance. It was to be expected that they would produce that performance. So we can't be disappointed. And I think they needed that for them. They needed that for themselves, which put them in such a strong position with these 2 games in hand.
It certainly did, and it was great to get, and we lost twice prior to that as well in Zebre, so it hasn't been a happy hunting ground, so it's brilliant to do that. And I suppose one of the reasons it was a good win was that Tom Farrell was playing so well, because the 3rd time this season Tom Farrell has started, and the 3rd time we've got a bonus point victory. But unfortunately, he's not going to be starting for quite a number of weeks because he got picked up that bad injury. Did Andy mentioned it in the press conference? Do you have any more details?
Yeah, no, just the knee injury. He didn't actually go into the details. It's always more difficult when you're doing these press conferences by Zoom rather than, you can't seem to interrupt like you can if you're actually in a room with someone. But obviously he said basically 6 weeks, I think, at minimum, at least, so it's obviously quite a serious injury, which is a huge shame because it's great to see Tom Farrell out there. I think he adds quite a lot to that midfield partnership, and it's actually quite nice. It was quite nice to see the dynamic now between himself and Tom Daly, because they haven't played together a lot as a combination, and I thought they actually worked very well against Zebre.
They did, and to the point that the Pro 14 have them as their centre partnership in their Pro 14 Team of the Week this week. And I suppose the only other thing we want to talk about that match before we preview the Ospreys game was the red card for Papali'i. I believe Connacht are going to appeal that decision because they feel it was somewhat harsh for him to get a red card. And it's Danny, you've been someone who's had to stop playing rugby because of head injuries. You can understand why red cards are given in these situations.
I can do. If you go to the letter of the law, it is it's law 9, foul play, point 13. A player must not tackle an opponent early, late, or dangerously. Dangerous tackles include, but it's not limited to, tackling a person above the shoulders, even if the tackle starts below. So, yes, it's a bit high. Now you can maybe argue that Papali'i is a big man, and the Zebre player did sidestep him just before, but I have to agree, I don't think there's any malice. These things do happen. I've suffered quite a few concussions in my time, and sometimes it just happens that way.
And it's going to have, Linley, this is a young man who's come halfway around the world to play rugby, and, he's got 2 red cards, and it's going to sort of, it's going to be quite tough for him to sort of deal with this, and he's going to need some decent amount of support, isn't he?
I think that's the issue that Andy Friend was talking about at press conference today. He doesn't want him to be tarred as that person with the 2 red cards, because then every time he goes out to play, it either hangs over his head or it's like this big cloud around him, or people are there looking and referees are constantly monitoring him, so he may never get the benefit of the doubt. I think the issue with him is obviously the fact of his background, that he is a rugby league background, and Andy has stressed the fact that they have been coaching him about the stance and his tackling, because he does run very upright and trying to to lower his stance in that respect when it comes to tackling. But I think the other thing about Abraham is it's a difficult time for him. He come from West Auckland, and he's come over here, and we know that he's travelled in Australia and with playing his rugby league, etc. But he's now over here for the first time, and he's being adapted into the role from rugby league into rugby, which is difficult as it is. His wife at the moment is actually back in New Zealand, Andy said. So he doesn't have her. You're in lockdown. You know, it's a very stressful time, and I think people kind of forget about the person rather than sometimes the player. That he's over here. I presume he's living by himself at the moment, with his wife being in New Zealand. I think Andy said that his wife Kez had taken round a spaghetti bolognese for him to put a bit of a smile on the dial, as he said to Abraham. So I don't think it's easy for people when they come over here from foreign countries and they have to adapt to a new game that he's not necessarily, overly, he's familiar with it obviously, but he still has to adapt. He has to adapt to an environment and a culture which is completely different. And he hasn't been over here for very long. Now he's very blessed that he has somebody, to be honest, like Auntie Friend, who is a lot more about the person than a lot of other coaches can be, because there are a lot of coaches that, don't take as much personal interest in people and how they feel. I think COVID has probably accentuated that.
Yes, very much so.
Very much so. And a lot of coaches probably have realized that they do have to look after the welfare of players, and I think that's very important.
Hopefully it all works out well and we get to see Abraham playing again, because he's quite a dynamic person on the field, it has to be said. We haven't had a chance because we've been normally we've had a chance to meet these guys and we can't in this COVID time, but hopefully these vaccines are going to kick in pretty soon and we'll be back to some level of normality and get to meet guys like Abraham, because they're always fascinating fellas. As we come near the end, the last thing we cover on our podcast is this preview of the Ospreys. Danny, people are afraid. Well, Rob certainly seemed to be very worried about the Ospreys at the weekend.
Yeah, I can understand Rob's worry. Since the first game we played against Ospreys, we've only got a 35% winning ratio. But on the other hand, we have a 50% when we play them at home. But since the championship winning season, we've played them 9 times, winning 5 of those. And the last time we played them at home, we got a bonus point try.
Linley, your thoughts on what we can or can't do at this weekend?
Well, the only thing you can do is win. I don't think there's any excuses. Well, quite frankly, if you want to be up there challenging for a title and challenging for semi-finals, you have to win. You have to win this match.
Yeah.
And I don't think will be too many excuses. We have, we've got a serious amount of players, capable players to do this. We're at home now. The funniest thing is, I did, ask Andy Friend about. I thought in the previous match that Connacht did against the Scarlets, that Connacht would have benefited from the crowd, the home, that they would have given them a renewed energy when they were very close to actually taking control of that match and winning. And I asked Andy Friend about that, and he said, well, look, it comes down now that they have to create their own energy, and that he wants to. I was quite surprised. The Scarlets were so vociferous, and Connacht were very quiet. They were yelling on the sidelines, they were clapping, they were cheering, they were doing everything they possibly could, and it worked.
Yes.
And I think that's what Andy Friend was saying, that they are going to have to do the same thing. They're going to have to applaud each other. They're going to have to rouse each other. They're going to have to produce their own energy. And I think that's extremely important against any side that comes to Connacht, to make them feel intimidated, to make them feel this is our place, this is Connacht's place, and you're going to have to work damned hard, to win. And I think Connacht are well able to beat the Ospreys. The biggest test, I suppose, is the fact that having to put these 2 wins back to back.
Yeah.
And can they do it? Because it for some reason, it seems to be that whenever Connacht get a good win, they almost then fall and then have to come back again I think that's the consistency, and I think consistency is really the key now for Connacht. Go back to 2016, go back to Pat Lam's winning title year. It was all about consistency, And I think they have the capabilities to do it. It's, it comes down to, I suppose, mental application in many cases. Also very important after last weekend, I think, and Andy Friend did mention that as well, is a strong start. Do not get left behind at the beginning. I mean, terrible try to give away, and it does always put you on the back foot. So I think Connacht will win this match. It's always going to be tricky. There's that's life. That's what they have to put up with. They have the capabilities and they have the players to do it.
They certainly do. Danny, do you back Linley's positive assertion about the result of the possible result of the weekend?
I do think we can take these guys on, and we should beat these guys. Now it will be a different test to Zebre, because this season Ospreys have been trying to play something similar to the way Connacht are. Ospreys have kicked for the most meters this season in the league. That's nearly 6,000 meters, and they have 188 kicks from hand.
Wow.
Now they do have 2 extra games on Connacht, but yeah, they seem to want to play in the right areas. But something that will something that goes against them is actually their lineout. Their lineout hasn't functioned as well as they thought. Losing 20 lineouts from 100 lineouts this season.
Wow. All right. So that could be something. Yeah, because I see Stephen Myler's playing with them, and I was surprised because Stephen Myler was playing for Northampton years and years and years ago in a quarter final, I thought, and he kicked the ball quite a lot that day and is renowned for that sort of thing. So yeah, it could be a bit of a kicking fest at the weekend. Okay.
So we might have two sides playing similar tactics, playing for areas of the park.
Yep.
Bring it on. Who's going to be the most efficient and who's going to execute the best?
So we get decent weather too. Some sort of decent weather, but it is November. So what am I saying?
I think somebody mentioned the fact that there's no rain due, but you can never rely on that, can you, in the West of Ireland? But that it would be. I think it might have been William actually who said it, and William would know these things. And that it was going to be extremely cold, but possibly dry.
Okay, right. So it could be a lot of running around, chasing after balls on the field, and a lot of wrapping up by everybody else on the sideline. Before the very end, just to let people know, you can catch us on Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, and remember, you can also just ask Alexa or just ask Siri to play the Craggy Rugby podcast, and they will play the latest version. And of course, we're going to have at the weekend. So this is our second podcast of the week, and then we'll have a little mini podcast on probably Friday when we get to talk to one of the coaches after the team selection. So we'll have a little mini pod that will go up on patreon.com. We're also moving to Acast, so this one will probably be our first podcast on Acast, having had 300 podcasts up to now on SoundCloud. We're moving to Acast. You won't have to do anything, as we'll have everything updated, so wherever you get your podcast, we'll still be in the same place. If you can help us out with the price of a cup of coffee for a month, you get everything there is to know about Connacht Rugby from us. And we do our best to give you as much information as we can and as much background about the team that we love and support. Okay, so just before we hear William and the fixtures and results, Danny, you've got some any other business?
Yeah, just a small one. If you get a chance, try and watch Oceans Apart, Greed, Betrayal and Pacific Rugby. It's a film on the Pacific Islanders. It's only an hour. You can get it on Vimeo and Amazon Prime. And it just kind of highlights what the Pacific Islanders have to go through to either get to Europe or just play for their country.
Okay, I'll tell you what. In an upcoming podcast, we'll get Linley and maybe William. We'll have a better chat about that after we've all watched it and had a look at it and see it, because I think the Pacific Islanders do produce an awful lot of rugby players and don't seem to get an awful lot of financial support based on it. But rather than talk about this now, let's keep that and we'll bring that in for a future podcast where we go into it in a bit more detail. Thanks for that, Danny. Okay, here's William.
In the Pro 14, 4 games were down for decision on Sunday, November the 22nd. Ospreys 24, Benetton 22, Zebre 12, Connacht 47, Leinster 40, Cardiff Blues 5, Ulster 26, Scarlets 24. And on Monday, November the 23rd, And Glasgow Warriors 13, Munster 27. And we'll have a look at the tables now. In Conference A, Leinster, 7 wins out of 7 with 7 bonus points, 35 points. Ulster, 7 wins out of 7 with 5 bonus points, second on 33. There's an amazing gap then back to the Ospreys in third, who have 3 wins and 4 losses out of 7 games with 13 points. Glasgow Warriors are in fourth with 1 win and 5 losses and 5 points. It's a little bit tighter in Conference B. Munster are on top. They've played 6, won 6 with 3 bonus points. They've got 27 points. Scarlets are in second with 3 wins and 4 losses out of 7 games played with 4 bonus points on 16. That puts them a point ahead of Connacht, who have only played 5 games. They have 3 wins, 2 losses, 3 bonus points on 15. The Cardiff Blues, who've played all 7 games, have 3 wins, 4 losses, 2 bonus points on 14 points. Edinburgh have played 6 times. They've got 2 wins, 4 losses, 2 bonus points, 10 points. And Benetton, who have now played 5 games with no wins, 5 losses, and just the 2 bonus points, are in 6th place. Round 8 of the Pro 14 continues next weekend. On Saturday, November the 28th, Connacht versus the Ospreys with a kick-off time of 7:35pm. On Sunday, November the 29th, it's Benetton versus Dragons at 4pm. Scarlets versus Leinster at 5:15pm. And Cardiff Blues versus Glasgow Warriors at 7:35pm. And then on Monday, November the 30th, Edinburgh versus Ulster at 8:15pm and Munster versus Zebre at 8:15pm.
Loose, cut it loose. Break out or nothing changes. Side